Hey, this is Lindsey Paoli, founder of Fundamental Health, and if you're looking to be in better health and learn more about biohacking, then you should be listening to the Hacked Life podcast with my good friend Joel Evans.
All right, I'm here with Lindsey Paoli. She has a Master of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy, former clinician turned life performance coach, helping leaders create systems to optimize their personal life so that their business can thrive. Lindsey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and tackle this. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm really excited because, we were talking before. It's pretty neat. Like for people that don't know, like we are both part of a coaching mastermind. So what a great way to like connect and meet with other high performers, right? And we were talking offline, and I've never had anybody like with your background and your credentials on this show. And so I'm really, really excited because I was telling you, like, hey, I've gone to a lot of therapy. I've been in like marriage and counseling therapy for the 3 to 4 years, and I got a ton out of it. And I think a lot of guys and leaders in general, they have this stigma about therapy and like what it really is and what it can do for them. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to shed a lot of light on that because you've actually gone away from that career and you find, I think, some of the principles in that so important
Yeah,
that you actually went away from that and you turned that into a coaching business for high performers. So this is going to be
absolutely.
cool.
I'm really glad you mentioned that too, because I also agree that especially high performing men have a stigma against therapy. It's a really big reason that I transitioned out of therapy and into coaching. Men are very comfortable being coached and they kind of understand that dynamic a little bit. They don't want to be fixed, they don't need to be fixed, right? They just want to better perform. And that's exactly what I offer with the exact same background that maybe their wife is begging that they kind of dive into.
Yes, yes. Okay, so love that. So let's talk about some of those things. Like, you know, when for you, like, was there a moment in time where you just realized, like, man, I want to make a career of this? Like, I want to, like, was there a moment or like a day that you just realized, like, I need to make this my life's mission to like dive into
Yeah.
psychology and high performance?
Yes, absolutely. Do you mind if I give you some background on just like my personal life leading up to this big moment in time? So,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
am
That's what I
an
want to
Air
hear.
Force brat and grew up all over in Europe and ended up going to college in California. At 18, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And coming from a very, staunch military background, I was like, not gonna, I wasn't gonna deal with that. I was fine. I was gonna power through. I got my degree in hospitality management and was doing great and thriving. I worked on the Las Vegas Strip. I live in Las Vegas for a really long time and just kind of like stuffed all that baggage to the side. I did everything you're supposed to, or that I thought you were supposed to. I got married, um, and I had a really great, thriving career on the Strip in hospitality management. I worked at for MGM Resorts International. I worked at the Wynn. I worked at Cosmo. I opened Vidara, and I was just really, really unhappy. And after 12 years of doctors begging me to consider medication or go to therapy, ended up finally going. And it was, I mean, I had tried other therapists and it was a lot of like woo woo dim lights, like deep breathing stuff that I was not about. And just happened into this therapist's office who was also a coach. Um, and it was just a transformation for me. I went straight single white female. I was like, how did you get to what you're doing? Like, I want to learn all about this. I want to be able to help people like this. Like, helping angry tourists on the strip is not my freaking calling in life. And so it was from there that I went on to get my master's. And yeah, it was literally on a therapist's couch that I was like, I can do this. Like, people change. It's really impactful work, and I want to do this.
That's so cool. Like for you at the time, like what was going on in your life that, or what was the big, I mean, I know you kind of mentioned it, but like what was, like, why were all these practitioners like begging you to go on, like, sit on a couch with a therapist? What was like the
Um,
biggest issue for you? What was coming up?
the biggest issue is at 18, I attempted my first suicide attempt. That was
Oh,
the
wow.
first big deal where doctors are like, okay, yes, you have anxiety, you're clinically depressed. The best route from here is to consider medication and go to a therapist and work through some of this. Um, I ignored that. And so if nothing changes, nothing changes. I learned no coping skills. I didn't understand what was causing it to begin with. And I just went about things the exact same way. But the way that you think leads to the way that you feel, which leads to the way that you act. And so if my feelings or if my belief was like I'm not worthy enough to even be on this planet, you can't go around choosing like healthy relationships with that. You don't know how to make a decision
Yeah.
about like the rest of your life and the career path. And so I was just making decisions kind of for everybody else and not for myself because I didn't understand enough about myself. And it just kind of sank me even further. And so by 26, I was divorced. And then by like 30, I just was in this constant cycle of terrible relationships. And I happened to be in another one of those relationships. And um, I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe we'll give couples counseling a try because clearly you're the problem, and a good therapist will tell you that, and she'll fix you, and we'll move on with our lives. And we broke up in our first session. And it was the next session after I begged the therapist. I was like, I want to keep seeing you. That I was like, okay, there's something to this. This is um, I'm the common denominator in all of this. And once I start making changes, everything else can start happening for me.
Wow, that's so amazing. It just seems like there was like a moment of clarity where you just realized like, holy cow, like I get to take control back into my life where maybe like it always feels like it's just out of control and like the world's just taking you wherever it wants to. But it
Yeah.
seems like there was this moment of for you where you really got it. Like, holy cow, like holy shit, like I get to take control of my life again. And like
Yeah,
I get to dictate what I want to do, you know?
exactly.
That's so neat. And I'm just curious too, like then now when you see, just the clients and the people that you coach and that you work with, it's like I love how you said, you know, y- you know, y- those coping skills or like you're like, "Oh, I don't need that." So how often do you see people that come through your practice and your coaching where there's probably like this sense of denial or like, "I don't need that." Like all that woo-woo stuff you're talking about, I don't need any of
Yeah.
that.
I mean, all of them.
Yeah.
All of them. I mean, and I kind of lure them in with like, I'm coming from a business background. I'm teaching you how to be a better leader. But all of these other things are affecting the way that you show up as a leader at work, the way that you're showing up in relationships at home, the way that you're prioritizing your health, or taking care of yourself or not taking care of yourself. All of these things um, are just the moving parts, like the cogs in the wheel to make everything function appropriately. So I think they all come in wanting one thing and not realizing how many other things need to be worked on under the surface to get there. I mean, and I'm digging in deep. Like, I think I try to tell people in their initial call, like, this is not what you expect it's going to be. I'm going to open up. We're like, I'm trained in EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing for trauma work. And
Yeah.
so I offer a barrier breakthrough session where we're identifying what is the belief that's causing you to feel a certain way that you determined when you were 5 years old on the playground when somebody didn't pick you, that suddenly is becoming your plateau in the rest of your life. Um, and how can we reprocess that? Um, what what's the story that you've been telling yourself that we are ready to let go of, and how is that affecting everything else in your life? And then, okay, you're a better leader because we've dealt with all of this other stuff.
Yeah, I love what you said. We were talking before about I think a lot of, the clients that we coach and the people that we work with, including myself, like before going down therapy and coaching and just surrounding myself and immersing myself with people like you is we try to think that there's this idea of like this work life balance, and it's a
Yeah,
complete joke. Like if I think like I'm going to be a powerful leader in the business world or in my coaching business, and then I'm going to go home and just have a terrible relationship with my wife and my kids, because I can balance it, like I can compartmentalize it. It just
Exactly.
doesn't work. Like if they're not thriving in those areas, then my entire business and everything else isn't thriving. Do you find kind of the same
Absolutely.
thing?
Absolutely. 100%. And that's really the premise of my work too, is I don't think that people who are in positions of power recognize how much people are truly looking up to them. So coaches, CEOs and executives, if you are that leader, you need to be leading by example, truly. And it's there's no work-life balance. People are going to judge you from the way that you're living your life outside of the office just as much as they're judging how you show up in the office. And I see that all the time with, the executive who's having affairs on the side and all of his employees are suddenly way disinterested. They've lost complete faith in this person and they're less, you know, driven to want to show up for him or her.
Hmm.
Um, like a slobby person who's like not taking care of themselves. It's not somebody that you aspire to be. You quickly lose people's respect when you're not taking care of yourself and your home, whatever that might look like, your relationships, the way that you treat people, the way you treat people who are not able to give you anything or service people that you consider under you. All of these things, the people that are working for you or looking up to you for advice or guidance or leadership or mentorship, those are all the things that they're truly looking at. And leaders, I think, kind of compartmentalize and they're like, well, I'm showing up here, I'm paying them great, or I know my health and fitness inside and out. And that's really not all that we're made of. There's no balance. We're looking at the full picture.
Yeah. So, when people come into your practice, and people work with you, I'm just curious, like, is there a common theme that you see that kind of comes over and over again, or that like a common mistake that people, or like, what's like the most common mistake that you constantly see some of the new leaders right now that are coming through? What are they making, or like, what are they not doing to be on top of their game?
Um, they're working too hard. They're not resting at all. Honestly, like, and I think it's especially with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have it a lot. It's just a lot more accepted that we grind until we die. We can sleep when we die, and um, you can sleep when you're successful. But you miss you truly miss the journey. That sounds so cliche to say, but literally the people who are the most successful, they'll tell you like the best parts of my life were building this business in the startup phases out of my garage or whatever that looks like. If it was, like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates both had like
Yeah.
really moderate starts, and those are usually the times that people look back on and share stories and are nostalgic about. And you miss that if you're constantly grinding and working, and you miss a lot of my clients, most of my clients have kids. You miss those really important moments that you'll literally never get back in those younger years of your children's lives. And if we're talking in terms of like you actually creating a legacy, the way that you're teaching your kids how to show up, you're kind of passing on a broken system to them too. So literally just slowing down and being in the moment. It's a very therapist thing to say, is to be practice being more mindful. But a lot of my clients were practicing presence and just being in the moment and being okay with slowing down a little bit. It sounds counterproductive to everything that everybody has taught us about success, but I think that it's the most important.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly anybody that's following you on Instagram, they can see like you just went on like your ninth vacation this year. So like you really got it dialed in as far as um, you know, that quote unquote work life balance, but really finding time to enjoy the moment and really being a successful um entrepreneur and business owner, and but at the same time finding that balance to enjoy that. You're practicing what you preach, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I honestly just realized yesterday that I have a sign over my shelf in my home office that says I want to lead a life that I don't have to take a vacation from. And I've never like I bought that like 3 years ago, and then I realized because it was kind of by accident that we planned these 9 trips that
Yeah.
we looked back and we're like, holy crap, that's a lot. But we truly have been living a life where if you do them both and you plan accordingly, you don't have to take the vacation. It's all just a built-in process from work and um, rest, I guess, and celebration.
Yeah. Yeah, like you're just because you're aligned with everything that you're doing, you're just naturally living that life. Like it just the
Yeah,
vacation is just kind of just happens, right? You're just
yeah,
being.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very neat. And it's funny because I think you're right. I think a lot of clients too that I see just from the health world, it's like sleep is a big issue, right? It's like if we
Yes,
just got you to sleep better, you might lose weight, you might have better sex, you might go on your vacations, you might be more present. And it's just that one thing, right? It sounds like you said so cliche. Um, I remember, and you probably even know this too. I remember Russell Simmons, who, if anybody doesn't know him, he's like was like the CEO of Def Jam, but and very successful guy, very successful entrepreneur. And I remember him. This was a long time ago. He was talking about he had just gotten into TM, transcendental meditation, and he
hmm
said something like, "If you can't sit still for 20 minutes." He's like, then you should be doing meditation like 4 hours a day. Like that's
yes,
how much you need it. You need to be able to check out that much because you will be like 10 times more productive. Kind of like what with what you're saying, I think.
yeah. And I 100% agree that sleep is a foundation that affects everything. It's going to disrupt your hormones, it's going to disrupt your cognition, your focus. In the mental health world, sleep is like understanding your circadian rhythm and your sleep patterns, and getting that in check is truly like a basic that you have to master. So I agree. That's
Yep.
one that a lot of my clients and I focus on.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, by the way. You know, you have a really nice you have some pillars in your
Yeah.
program, and you talk about the mind fundamentals. Can you kind of break that down for everybody and share with why that is so
Yeah,
important, why you
absolutely.
think it's such a
So,
important thing?
I do. So my practice is called fundamental health, and my entire belief is that we've become so far removed from the way that we're supposed to be living, just the way that we're designed as human beings, that that is disrupting the way that we think and the way that our bodies are responding. And it's a really easy fix. We just have to remember that we're animals that were sent on this or put on this earth to live in a certain way. And the more what times that we can like get reconnected to that design, the better our body's going to function for us and the more success that's going to come along with that. So, MIND is an acronym that I've created. It stands for movement, intention, nourishment, and deep connections. They're super simple practices that you can incorporate into every single day that, like a lot of people, if they actually sit and reflect, will realize that they don't. So,
Right.
obviously, with your clientele, movement is really important. And Science is showing over and over the more our bodies move, the more benefit we have cognitively and within our brains as well. And intention is then setting a goal and achieving a goal every single day so that we're creating like little mini senses of purpose. Obviously, having like a long term goal to be aspiring towards step by step is helpful, and creating that clarity is really important. Um, but understanding yourself enough to know what that goal looks like on a day-to-day basis. Like if you're having a rough day, sometimes that goal is just I'm just going to make my bed today and then I'm going to get climb right back in it and go back to sleep. That's fine. Whatever the goal is, it's understanding you and setting that intentional purpose. Nourishment, the way we fuel our body impacts the way that our body functions. It's so basic, but we live in a society where the American diet is like one of the worst things for just normal healthy function, and deep connections. If COVID taught us anything and lockdown last year taught us anything, I think that it is we are truly tribal people. We are not intended to be isolated. Um, Isolation, interesting fact, is a higher predictor of early death than smoking a pack of cigarettes per day. So
Wow.
we're meant to be connected with one another. That's really important. And just finding ways to connect, not with social media and that like really fake surface level stuff, like getting to know one another and vulnerably opening up and asking for help is one of the easiest way I think you can create a deep connection really easily.
That's huge. I love at the end too, deep connection tribe. I mean, it's you're right. It's so critical, and we saw some great evidence over the last 2 years with just the pandemic and the lockdowns, and we saw what that lack of connection can do.
Yeah.
By the way, are you going to come out with a book that kind of outlines that? You totally should.
It is in yes, it's on my vision
I
board
don't know if I
actually. I
jumped the
have a
gun,
vision
but
board right here. I'm doing a vision bossing workshop in 2 weeks, and it's been on my vision board. It's in the works hopefully next year. Yes. Thank you.
okay, cool. Yeah, you have to come out with a book talking about your mind fundamentals. That's so huge. That would be a great book, just so you know.
Awesome. Thank you.
Talk about that really quick, by the way. What is this? I saw you've been posting about that vision bossing. Can you kind of talk about what you got going on?
Yeah. So, I think one of the biggest things I learned from I don't wanna say that I overcame depression because depression and anxiety are kind of like cancer. You're just in constant remission, and you have to maintain the life choices to keep it in remission. Um, but one of the things that I think I took most from my depression is that I have to be thinking long term and, not just short term. And so vision boarding is something that I just thought was stupid and childish and, just I don't know what compelled me to just make a vision board one year, and then I realized there's truly a lot of, like, science behind why it's effective and why it's helpful, and I didn't mention too, but nourishment is not just what you put in your body, but what fuels you, um, mentally too, and we are a society that doesn't practice hobbies nearly as much as we should, so sometimes it's a creative outlet, and vision boarding is that fun creative outlet that just kinda puts you in the flow zone and feels good. And so it's just something that I've
Mm.
started teaching over the last 3 years. I call it vision bossing. It's literally creating vision boards for business owners and entrepreneurs, and business leaders. I have a very specific method for creating a vision board that works. We look into your long-term goals and then kind of break it down into shorter-term goals. And I'm doing 2 workshops, one on December 18th and then one in January here in Las Vegas, and I'm trying to get an online version. So maybe by the time this airs, I'll have figured out an online option.
Yeah, we'll try to get this out in the next couple weeks so people can hear about it. And the one on December, that's going to be in Vegas as well.
Yes, they're both in Las Vegas. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, very cool. So people can meet up with you there and learn
Yeah,
how
if
to
you're
be a
in
vision
Vegas, come check us
boss.
out. It'll be at the Space, which is right behind the Strip. We're looking at 50 to 100 people. It's going to be a great networking opportunity too. But you'll get to learn a lot of the neuroscience behind why creating long-term goals and taking the time to sit down and create a vision board is actually rewiring your brain to meet success.
That is neat. Okay, very cool. You mentioned something also just about depression and anxiety. And I'm curious because I've worked with a lot of clients in the past that have had these anxiety attacks. And I've seen on your stories and stuff, you actually mentioned that a lot. What are some, like, what are some steps or some things people can do if that's something that you've noticed that really works, if they're experiencing anxiety attacks, or even if one starts to overtake them, like what can they do in that moment to, you know, knock it
Yeah.
out?
I'm glad you asked this because first I want to clarify that there is a difference between an anxiety attack and a panic attack. And I don't think a lot of people realize this. So, an anxiety attack is normally just feeling overwhelmed. And then, of course, your body has physical sensations that accommodate the anxiety symptoms. And so, people who are new to anxiety are usually battling those physical symptoms and not sure how to manage them appropriately. Whereas but they do know that they're in a situation that is anxiety inducing. So if you're afraid of
Mhm.
public speaking and suddenly you're sweating and you're trembling and you can't get your voice under control, and your eyes feel like you're getting tunnel vision, that would be considered kind of an anxiety attack. I mean, your body's going into fight or flight mode, essentially. Your nervous system is taking over and saying, we're in an unsafe situation. We're going to prepare for battle or to get out of here. So your nervous system kicks in. You start breathing really shallowly. Your eyes tune in because, yeah, your eyes are going to zone in on your perceived threat. And all of these sensations feel incredibly overwhelming if you're not able to get them under control. So I'll talk about how to handle that in a second. But then another thing that is similar to that is a panic attack. And panic attack is actually a diagnosable disorder. I think it's panic disorder. I'm a little out of practice. And that'll be out of nowhere. So, and that's kind of terrifying once you get to that level of anxiety that panic attacks are happening frequently and with nothing prompting them. Then it almost like starts to spiral because you feel like you've completely lost control of your body and your brain. And actually, the response to best cope with those are the same thing. But I just want to, for people who don't know the difference, panic attacks are almost like escalated anxiety attacks. So if you're having really frequent anxiety
Mm.
attacks and you're not managing the anxiety and understanding how to control it and what the root cause of it is, it could eventually escalate into panic attacks. And that's where you're just like waking up in the middle of the night, feeling like you're dying, you can't get your breath under control. People will go to the hospital assuming that they're having a heart attack because their body is so pumping full of adrenaline that they're not able to manage. And it sounds,
Wow.
it's they're terrifying. Have you ever had? I mean, have you ever had anxiety or a panic attack?
Anxiety, yes. Never a panic attack.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
can't
So good.
imagine.
That's
I mean,
why
I
I
know
wanted
people
to
that have had it.
differentiate that.
Yeah, you know.
And so if people are experiencing or panic attacks, know that your anxiety has gone maybe mismanaged for much longer than simply an anxiety attack. So you got to get in there and take care of it. The key to managing either of these is literally slowing down and getting back into your body. And so there are techniques called grounding techniques or anchoring techniques where um, you're simply bringing your senses back into what you can control. So we can do one together really quickly right now. So if
Yeah.
somebody is having an anxiety or a panic attack, I'm going to ask you instead of because you're kind of freaking out about like what are people going to think of me? What is this like? Are people going to assume that I'm losing control? Or I knew this was going to happen again. So you're so focused on the future or the past and kind of predicting or mispredicting what everybody else's response is or what was done wrong, quote unquote, that you're not taking control of your body in the present. So grounding makes you feel your body and regain control. So you want to do an exercise real quick?
Yeah,
It'll take
let's
it
do it.
like 2 minutes. Okay, so I
Perfect.
want you to name 5 things you can see in your room right now.
My ring light, the blinds, some chargers, my massage table, and my electric stim machine.
Okay, 4 things you can feel.
I actually feel relaxed right now, chatting with
I
you.
love it.
Um, I do feel this is just again. I feel grateful right now. I feel just I'm just really enjoying the moment,
You can
being
even
here.
use like tactile
And
sensation. Like it doesn't necessarily, I mean, because a lot of people with anxiety are going to really struggle to identify 4 emotions. But I love that you've done that. That's
mm,
like the um, advanced version.
yeah, um, yeah, just calmness, gratitude, love, um, really
One more.
ease. That's what I feel right now.
Perfect. 3 things you can hear.
I hear the heater. I have like this little portable heater on right now because it's cold here in
Hmm.
Idaho.
Yeah.
So I have I have this little heater on in the background. I hear that.
Yeah.
Um, and that is like really it. That's like drowning everything else out. I don't everything else I got these suctioned headphones on right now, so it's really just you, the heater, and
Perfect.
that's about
And
it,
your voice?
and my own voice. Yeah,
There we go. So that's three. Two things you can smell.
leather
That's
bound. No, I'm just
harder.
kidding. Leather. Yeah, I was gonna say. Um, I got my coffee,
Yeah.
and um, um, yeah, that is harder. Coffee, coffee, and air.
Just room and just space. How about a book?
The
Like you
room,
can,
yeah, like just like that was, yeah.
yeah. And then can you taste anything? And if you can't, then go ahead and take a taste of your coffee so that you're practicing being in your body
Oh,
and tasting.
perfect.
There you go.
Coffee for the win. Yeah.
So that's a lot to remember when you're having a panic attack, but or an anxiety attack. But I mean, you these all of these tools come better with practice, right? So just stopping and being in the moment and having to search for five things, you're like, this is ridiculous. Suddenly stops the panic from taking over and brings you back into control of your body. Another thing that is the number one indicator for like stopping your flight or flight response is breathing. So
Shocking.
once you get in the
Yes. Breathing.
practice of deep breathing and controlling your breathing, doing things like four square breathing, which Navy SEALs do to train for, that combat to keep them calm, are things that are literally going to control your body's fight or flight response and get it from the heart racing, shallow breathing to the deep breaths, which are helping your body to send response or send hormone responses of calm and relaxation and the rest and digest response rather than fight or flight.
Yeah, I love that. I like how you created that. It's like a 5 4 3 2 1. I think is how you kind of moved me through that scale. So
Yep.
like you said, it would take some practice, but you can really it wouldn't be hard over time to after you do it a couple times. You could really make that
And it's going
like
to
an easy
change no
practice.
matter where you're at, right? Because you're going to see five different things. You're going to, like, regardless of where you're at, you can do these things. And other people don't have to know that you're doing them. That's a big thing with
Hmm.
anxiety is usually exacerbated by the thought of, oh my God, they're going to think that I'm losing control. And so there are things that you can do. Even the deep breathing is something that you can do to control your body and all of those physical responses without anybody being like, oh my God, are you okay?
Yeah. I'm curious too. You mentioned early on about EMDR, and I've heard about this using this really for PTSD and some like in
Yep,
trauma. Like people have gotten a lot of great success. Um, in your practice, do you see? Obviously, you're using that as a tool, but do you see like some great success too for anxiety, people with anxiety or panic attacks doing EMDR? And if so, how many treatments
absolutely.
typically?
So in my coaching program, I offer one barrier breakthrough session, and we usually I schedule it so that it's about a 90-minute to 2-hour session. And so we only do the one session unless they do any add-ons. But all of the clients that I've worked with, even in the coaching capacity, have found it to be incredible. And um, they're not necessarily coming to me for anxiety. I don't think most of my clients would
Yeah,
acknowledge or even know that they have anxiety. It's something that I end up educating them about.
yep,
Um, but yes, I think honestly, a big part of why I ended up leaving mental health and going into the coaching capacity is I think that we don't talk enough about the root cause of things in mental health. It's kind of like, oh, you have these symptoms, let me get rid of these symptoms. But there's something that's causing that. And so it continues to keep coming back up, which is why I kind of described it like cancer. You have to keep it in remission. So you have to identify really, we create these stories for ourselves. As humans, we live by the narrative, right? Like everything is created in stories. Um, and so, just like I said, the way that we think leads to the way that we feel, leads to the way that we act. If your story is misaligned or broken or no longer true for you, EMDR is a really cool way to identify what that story is, where that story came from, and reprogram it to a more fitting story for your life currently. So with trauma, absolutely, that's it's easy, right? You're understanding the story that you're telling yourself about a terrible experience and repurposing that. But a lot of my clients don't recognize that sometimes that story um, comes from, just a random time that maybe mom didn't console you when you scraped your knee, and so you're like, "I'm unlovable," or "I'm a burden," and that carries on into, the rest of your life. If that's how you feel, that really gets in the way of you being able to find the success that you want, and we kind of create these same stories and patterns, to make the story true. So identifying that root story and reprogramming that is really, really powerful in really severe situations and in kind of menial situations. But I see it as incredibly impactful for clients, regardless what their quote unquote problem is.
Yeah, and the EMDR, I thought you had to be in like a in-person like studio facility. You can do that all remotely.
Yep, absolutely. So eye movement desensitization reprocessing is the full name of it. But Francine Shapiro is the founder of EMDR. Like the backstory is she was walking through the woods and noticed like she was like glancing at trees and just kind of watching her path. And so it almost feels like the stereotypical like hypnotism on movies and stuff, where
Yeah.
your eyes are kind of darting back and forth. And that's important because obviously we have a left hemisphere of our brain and a right hemisphere of our brain. And they've since found that the eye movement is not necessarily as crucial as just the bilateral stimulation. So you don't necessarily have to move your eyes. You can tap. So we do like butterfly taps. Some people tap on their own, like tops of their thighs or anything. And what you're doing is you're stimulating the right hemisphere of your brain and then the left hemisphere of your brain, because most of us have a dominant hemisphere, and
Mm,
we we create our stories or live through our stories with that dominant hemisphere. And having that bilateral stimulation gets you kind of into a sweet spot in the middle. So if you're a very cognitive person, um, understanding a little bit of the emotion behind that situation or that story that you created gets you into a better place to put things together and connect dots in a completely different way than you typically would. And so it's really the bilateral stimulation, that's the effective part of it. And doing it virtually, like I said, you can either encourage the client to do tapping, or there are apps where it'll have you watch a dot go back and forth to create that stimulation for you.
very neat. And then that's as you guide them through the session.
Absolutely.
And
So that's,
yeah.
I mean, with any procedure, making sure that you have somebody who's able to guide you or kind of challenge you is really what I see it as. But I do also, I encourage people to try it on their own. Like it's amazing, like for sleep, for instance, if you start doing the bilateral stimulation, it's a natural self-soothing technique that we find in human living constantly, day to day, like that we've already found to be beneficial for us. Running, for instance, is my number one way. If I have a problem, I know I go for a run, I'm going to come out with an answer that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And that's
Mm.
bilateral stimulation. Going for a walk, a swim, a bike ride. All of these things are also tapping into your brain in that same way. um, but if you're trying to challenge yourself to identify something from maybe an uncomfortable time in your life and then reprocess that, yeah, I would encourage that you definitely do that with a professional.
One last question on EMDR. Have you seen success? I'm just curious with like athletes, getting an injury or something. And the reason I'm thinking about this is I'm working with a professional um, bicycle rider, and he got injured, and he's got this nagging injury that's still lagging on, and he was looking at other solutions like possibly EMDR, as a just he's going to try everything. He wants to get back on the
Yeah,
bike, and he's wondering if some of the emotional baggage and the trauma is preventing
yeah.
him from getting there. So I'm just curious, like with athletes, have you seen that?
I'm trying to think. I don't think that I've done one specifically with an athlete, but yes,
Or
if
an
his
injury or something
story
like that?
is I'm injured and I'm broken and I've got to fix something, then he's going to continue to play out that story until he finds that it no longer serves him. So I think absolutely getting to the root of that story and reprocessing that um, will help him work through that injury. Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, I might have to send him to you then.
Yeah, I would love to.
Because and like him specifically, Lindsay, he doesn't want to like he's looked for some other professionals, but they want to do like 3 therapy sessions first, then move him to EMDR. And he's like, I want to do EMDR now. Like, can't we do it now, or do I have to do these three? So I don't know. Maybe there's a
Yeah.
way he can.
And
Um,
I think they probably are because they're licensed therapists, so they're required to get, a certain level of understanding and background. But the way, I mean, I have an entire diatribe of why I think licensure and the way that insurance is built doesn't necessarily help clients. But initially, I mean, at its core, Francine Shapiro didn't want to get a ton of back history. You just want to get the certain narratives that you want to come up. And so I feel like almost that could be detrimental to the work because as humans, you're trying to find the problem. And if you just allow the client to come in and provide the problem for you and you're only working on that, then it gets less messy. So sure, I'd love to work with
Very
him.
cool. Yeah, there we go. Professional athletes. That's gonna be your second niche.
I
Getting
mean,
them on.
I've deemed myself the life performance coach. Athletes were definitely in mind when I
Yes.
built that. So absolutely.
Yeah, that would be huge. Um, I want to go get ready to go into some lightning round questions, but before I do, I'm just curious, like any other exciting projects or anything that you're working on?
Yes, I actually have created a planner. So I have the Mind Master Planner. I just realized I didn't bring in my new one. But I have so it's a daily planner, again, based on all of the practices that I think are crucial, the movement, intention, nourishment, and deep connections, but also creating long-term goals and then chunking them down into bite-sized um, goals and habits throughout the year. So it teaches you how to do that. There's journal prompts to kind of allow you to dream really big and then size it down. There's daily affirmation practices. There is habit creation and habit tracking so that you're able to see the correlation between practicing the mind fundamentals and doing other really basic things like getting fresh air outside, drinking enough water, um, and how your overall mood is affected. So I've created it as a really simple way. Like it shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes a day because all of my clients are incredibly busy already. The last thing they want to do is spend an hour journaling every single day to try and implement this process that I'm teaching them. So it's really helping you to create habits and then see the immediate results of the habit. So it's like almost your immediate instant gratification to keep implementing the habit um, that I have not released yet, but I have plans to start releasing on my website and my Instagram within the next week.
That is super cool. Very exciting. Love that. And then before we jump into some lightning round questions, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
No, I think we covered everything. I feel like I could just sit and talk for hours, but no, this is going good.
Love that. All right, let's do it then. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Now I'm putting you in the hot seat. I'm putting
I
the
know.
the therapist coach in the hot seat.
Yeah,
All right.
bring
If
it.
the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
Everything is happening the way it's supposed to. Just hang in there.
Love that. What are some choices that you think you made that made you who you are today?
I think I made a lot of what I deemed mistakes for a long time. Um, Honestly, attempting suicide twice by the age of 30, I didn't even like tell the full story, um, has truly led me to appreciate life in a completely different way. The more I've learned about myself and what I want. Um, I think being in really terrible relationships helped me to find a good relationship and what I wanted. It truly is like all the mistakes and missteps in life lead you exactly where you're meant to be. That's also a super cliche that you realize the older you get is absolutely true. So all of my biggest mistakes have been my biggest blessings, I think also.
Yeah, love that. I couldn't agree more. That's when you learn. That's when you grow, right? If you
Yeah.
choose to learn and grow. And
Yep.
so now you're here
Exactly.
today,
You
and
have to choose.
you're out there running triathlons and marathons and taking 9 vacations and still showing up for your clients on a daily basis. I'm curious though, like who inspires you? And is there anybody like in the health, wellness, or just like mindset kind of world that inspires you?
Um, I am a huge fan of Brene Brown. I don't know that she's necessarily in the mindset world, and she's like everybody loves her. I don't know anybody who doesn't love
Yes.
her, but she is one of those people, honestly, that my therapist and coach at the time made me watch her vulnerability talk. This is like way back. Like, I don't
Yeah.
remember, maybe 2013. And it just like that shook me. It like rocked my whole world. And now I just live and breathe on everything she does. And I want to get on Tim Ferriss. And for people to get on, for women especially, to be able to talk about feelings and um, all the uncomfortable stuff and then still be seen as a respectable expert, that's just super badass. And I want to do that with my work. And so I really aspire to follow in her footsteps somehow.
Yeah, Brene Brown is amazing. She's got another book too that I read. I think it's called True Belonging. I think that's what it
Yeah,
is. Um, I got a lot out of that book. She's great. Good stuff.
she is. She's awesome. And she's like very Texas. I lived in Texas for a while and loved it. And
Yeah.
she's just like very true to Texas, I feel like.
On that note, Brene Brown, True Belonging. What are some books? Are there like 1 to 3 books that you know that you would that had a huge impact on your life that you'd recommend other people read?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one that really kind of led me in the direction that I work in is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg.
Yeah. Okay.
Incredible book on understanding how repetition helps the brain and helps marketing and how it infiltrates our life in so many different ways. And once you harness it, it can work in your favor. And now I've created an entire program, coaching program built around creating habits. So I think that was influential for me. Another is When the Body Says No by Dr. Gabor Mate. It's an incredible book. Have you read it?
No.
Okay. So he is
I guess I'm gonna have to now.
yeah. He is a Canadian MD who worked in palliative care. So, as people are dying from cancer, um, usually
Mm,
he's seeing their end of life care. And he started noticing that a lot of the people who were dying very young or dying from really horrific bodily response diseases such as like MS or cancer, he started noticing that a lot of them had a very similar pattern of not dealing with things. And so the entire premise of the book is if you deny what your body needs, whether it is setting healthy boundaries in relationships or communicating better or understanding your emotions and communicating them more effectively so that you're not bottling them up and creating that constant hormonal imbalance that happens from doing that, then your body is going to show up in different ways and make you take note of the work that you need to do. And that's something I've started to notice too in a lot of my clients. Like I've had clients with Parkinson's disease and clients with migraines or insomnia, and all of these things are usually stemming from poor communication, poor boundary setting, a complete misunderstanding of emotional mastery at all, if any. Really, really powerful stuff.
yeah, I love that. I there's just 2 books I just bought on Audible, and one's called The Emotion Code, and another one's called they're similar to what you're talking about. I haven't got into them though.
I
And
just
The
heard
Body
about the
Keeps the
emotion
Score.
code. Oh, yes. That was
Yeah,
the third book I was going to say. Very similar premise, Dr. Bessel
perfect.
van der Kolk. Amazing work understanding how trauma affects the body specifically. That trauma is held in the body, your body responds to fight or flight. And if you don't create that release, whether it's through EMDR or otherwise, um, then you're going to experience a lot of like pain or suffering from it. And
Yeah.
we're
Great
also,
stuff.
I want to make sure I get this statistic right, but we have a higher rate of pain management in our country by like a ridiculous amount. I would have to look it up than any other country in the world. So, and obviously we have the opioid crisis because of it. We're,
Hmm.
creating a short-term solution to a long-term problem. But if you
Yep.
identify pain and like things like back pain as being unresolved trauma and an inability to communicate or understand emotions, then you just see that we're struggling a lot more as a country than I think we realize, because other countries do it very differently.
Yeah. I'm curious, are there any like rituals or hacks or practices that you do on like a regular basis? I'm assuming maybe
The
the
mind
mind,
fundamentals,
mind journal.
absolutely. Yeah, of course. I mean, I got to practice what I preach, and um, yeah. So practicing movement, intention, nourishment, and deep connections in some capacity every single day is what I think keeps me in remission from my anxiety and depression. Honestly,
Yep. Yeah. And then I want you to finish this sentence. 2020, we know it was a tough year for a lot of people. I know we're in 2021, but you could even say the same thing about 2021. I mean, really, we've all been locked down in a pandemic and all this stuff. But tell me why. Finish this sentence. 2020 was the greatest gift because dot 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 dot.
because we learned that we're not meant to be alone. That being connected with others is a crucial part of our existence, and um, I think that that's really important.
Love that. That is great. That's the first time I've heard somebody say that. That's beautiful. Lindsay, last but not least, if people want to reach out to you, they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
I am most active on my Instagram, which is at the Life Performance Coach. Um, I also have my website, www.lindseypaoli.com, where you can learn about my Mind Master one on one coaching. I do corporate speaking to help your business better incorporate the mind fundamentals and better practices for yourself and your employees. Um, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Lindsay, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.